on the political spectrum. Maybe you can push back on that. Can you make the case for either perspective on your own personality as a fan of yours that that you do lean left or you don't lean left?
I think it depends on the kinds of issues we're talking about. I do tend to lean left on the social and cultural issues.
Yes.
So I'm a believer, a firm believer. I didn't believe this when I was younger. I've come to believe that people should choose their own lifestyle and that we should get out of the way. I'm a believer, deep believer as a father of a 20-year-old woman that my 20-year-old daughter should have the right to make any choice she wants with her body. And if she were to get pregnant at a fraternity party at college, she should have the right to decide whether to have a child or not. So on those issues, that would code me left of center. I'm actually reasonably conservative on fiscal issues. I don't think we should spend money we don't have. I'm skeptical. I've long been skeptical of cryptocurrency and things like that. I know some of your listeners will disagree with me, and this part is part of my own ignorance of cryptocurrency. But I'm conservative, lowercase c, in the way I think about fiscal issues. I worry about debt. I'm a believer that there are certain areas where the federal government should play more of a role, and there are other areas where things should be left to the localities. And so sometimes that can code me one way or another. But I think I sound sometimes a little more left of center because on the social issues, I definitely.
Well, I mean, there's other explanations, not to be grilling you too hard here.
No, it's fair.
Because you're also an exceptionally respected and successful professor in the university system, where sometimes there is a lean towards the left. And the other aspect is, I think, your viewpoints on Trump. Where you're a strong critic of Donald Trump.
Yes.
And I guess the question I want to ask is, you as a historian, does that color your perspective of history? Do you ever catch yourself where maybe your criticism of Donald Trump might affect how you see the Civil War? Like as you were completely diving in and looking at the Civil War, are you able to put aside your sort of the current day political viewpoints?
No, I'm not. I think we have to be honest that none of us are objective. We strive to be nonpartisan. I really liked when you said that because I think it's an aspiration. No one is objective. We all have our biases. You know, some people like chocolate, some like vanilla. And that's just the reality, right? And as far as I know, it's very hard even to biologically explain that. And so my view is that what a good historian, what a good scholar does, I don't care what the field is you're self-conscious of your biases, and you try to recognize them as you're doing your research, and you make doubly certain that where your research seems to reinforce your biases, that you actually have the evidence to make that argument. But I still believe even doing that someone with a slightly different perspective might read the same evidence in different ways. That's what makes history vibrant. So I wrote this book in part, as I say in the introduction, because I was self-critical watching Trump and the things I, quite frankly, find deeply dangerous about Donald Trump and about what happened on January 6th. And I found I had not thought deeply enough about the roots of that in our society, because I don't believe Trump or any one figure creates these kinds of movements. They come out of a deeper history.
Just a small side tangent. I do believe your work is nonpartisan. But it's also funny that there are a lot of people on the right that would read your work and say that you're partisan. And I think the reason that can happen sometimes, not strongly though, I think you do a really good job, is like the use of certain words also. I try to be cognizant of that. I try not to use words that trigger people's tribalism. It's kind of interesting. So you have to be also aware of that maybe when you're writing history, when you're writing in general, is if you're interested in remaining, you can put on different hats. Right. You can be carefree in just stating your opinion of criticizing Donald Trump or Joe Biden, or you can be nonpartisan deliberately. And that takes skill probably and avoiding certain triggering words.
And to me, it's about choosing your battles.
Right.
So I tried to write because I want everyone to read. And I actually think people on the left and right have a lot to learn from this history. So many people have said to me around the country, this is history I wish I had known before. But there are moments when I use words that I know are controversial because I'm trying to show there's a fact base behind them. So white supremacy does exist. I've had people say, I don't think that's I think that's a politically correct term, or it's a woke term. It can be used in the wrong ways. One should not go around calling everything one doesn't like that. Uh, but the Confederates were white supremacists. And I use that word because I think it's an accurate descriptor, and we need to recognize that that is a part of our history. But that does trigger some people.
And
right?
because that language is used to mean other things currently. So the press will take on certain terms like white supremacist and label everybody white supremacist. Like a lot of people that basically are on the right or something like that. They use this outraged language, and that actually ruins the ability to use the language precisely.
Exactly.
For historical context.
That's exactly right.
But you do have to, unfortunately, we do have to. No, actually, people disagree. You might disagree with this, but I tend to try to avoid, like, take on the responsibility of avoiding that language. Like if the press is using a certain kind of language, I try to avoid it.
Yeah, what I try to do is sometimes avoid it, but where I think the language is necessary,
Precise, yeah,
to be precise, but also to contextualize it. Sure. So I don't call all Confederates white supremacists, but I point out where white supremacist ideas have influenced them, right? And I point out where certain individuals are doing things that resonate with that. But I'm against these kind of blanket labels and categories.
And you also have to speak about white supremacism in that context in a nuanced way. So people use white supremacism without thinking what that means, and they just use it as a slur word, like this evil person. But white supremacy is also just an ideology that a lot of people have believed throughout. Supremacy, whatever, white, black supremacy, whatever supremacy, believing that some people are better than others, some group is better than another. And there's been nations built around these kinds of ideas. And a lot of human history is built around those ideas. It's not just evil people believe in this. We in the United States of America believe this kind of ideology is not productive. It's unethical. But those ideas have been held by a lot of people, and not like fringe groups.
Right.
But majorities of nations.
Right. I'd say the same about anti-Semitism. And there are many people who are not anti-Semites, but don't recognize that they're carrying around or promoting anti-Semitic ideas or anti-Semitic myths.
It's a thought that's been held by a lot of people, and you need to be convinced out of it. That requires conversation and being empathetic. It's not just calling somebody an anti-Semite and you're evil because you've ever said something that's kind of a dog whistle against Jewish people. You have to be open-hearted to that. That these are ideas that you have to contend with. That you have to ultimately, I think, heal the division behind those ideas by having empathetic conversations with people, as opposed to, again, throwing poop. I just like saying poop. All right. Ooh, I got a challenge for you. Given that you have been an outspoken critic of Donald Trump, can you say one thing you like and one thing you don't like about Donald Trump? And perhaps can you do the same for our current president,
Sure.
Joe Biden? One thing you like and one thing you dislike.
So it's harder for me to do the one thing I dislike because there's so many things I dislike. But the one thing I like about Donald Trump, he believes that America should be a better country. I disagree on what he thinks it should be, but he's not a declinist. He's someone who believes the world could be made better. I disagree with what he's trying to do. I disagree with how he's trying to do it, but I like the fact that he thinks it can be better. His whole argument for himself is that he can make things better. I don't think he can, but I think things can be made better. So I like the second half of that sentence. When he says, I can make things better, take the I out. I like the can be better, because there are too many people on the left and the right who think that that we can't make things better. We have to accept them as they are, or they're getting worse. I think a world without hope is horrible, and I think what he has offered his followers is a kind of hope.
Mm-hmm. So underneath his message is a kind of optimism for the future of this nation.
Yeah, it's a narcissistic optimism, but it's still an optimism. Yes, that he's promising that if you elect him again, he will make things better, and I think people need to be told, and we need to believe that we can make things better. So that part I accept, and I reject those who say we can't make things better. My whole historical career is about showing that history gives us tools to make things better. So I like the idea of trying to make things better and giving people hope and reason to believe that things can be better.
What's the main thing you dislike about Donald Trump?
I think he has